'Twas on the month of Liverpool, in the city of July. The snow was raining heavily, as true as any lie. I jumped aboard a tramway car to cross the Regent Main. I asked the guard to punch my ticket. He said he'd punch my brain. I fell in love with an Irish girl. She could sing a merry dance. She came from Tipperary, just a few miles out of France. Her father was a dairymaid on board the USA. He used to get 5 bob a week to feed Pat Murphy's goat. Pat Murphy's goat was bad last night. It died the night before. And now I'll finish off my lies by telling you no more. Now, before any of the keyboard warriors rushed to tell me that that was the wrong words, there are many, many, many versions of that rhyme. And in my mind, I think its origins are in Belfast. And I may be wrong. Again, if I'm wrong, feel free to type in and tell me that I'm wrong. I've not exactly studied this. That's the version that I learned from my grandfather when I was very, very young. I used to say that and various other kind of rhymes and poems and silly songs very often. My grandfather, I'll refer to him from now on as Papa, because that's in Ayrshire, or where I come from anyway, from my background. Your grandfather is called your Papa. I had 3 papas that I know of. I was my Papa Monaghan, Jimmy Monaghan, I was named after, died before I was born. I never met him. He died in an accident at work at Cronbury Moor Pit. My granny then married again, and so I had a guy called Papa Loy, who was more or less just, rather than a papa, he was my granny's husband. And my gran died when I was very young as well, so I didn't really know him very much either. So this Papa, the one with the silly poems and things, Papa Kirk, Archie Kirk, that was the Papa that I grew up with. And I'll tell you a wee bit about him before I come to my point about the silly rhymes and things. Archie was he lived his whole life settled in Cumnock. He was born in what was known as Sour Milk Raw, or for the more proper out there, Sour Milk Row, which I think is, for anybody that knows Cumnock, it's roughly kind of in the car park behind the Dagmar, down by the river. And he used to tell me that when the river was higher in spate, the water would rise up and come through the floor of their house with rats. They moved briefly, I think, to Townhead Street, up near where the big club, as it was known, was the Working Men's Club, near where, roughly roundabout near where the current Asda is, around about there, briefly. And then when the first council houses were built up in Wiley Crescent, they moved there when he was, in 1935, they moved there, and he lived there virtually his whole life, until he was very ill and moved in with my parents, so that they could look after him. And that was only 1 street away. It was on McCall Avenue, 1 street away. He was a very quiet man, Archie. He didn't say a lot. And I think if anybody knew my gran, Annie Richmond, you would understand why. There wasn't much room for him to she was larger than life, let's say, and there wasn't much room for him to say much. But he was a quiet guy, and he was into his bowls. He was a very good bowler. Bowls are, again, for the posh, lawn bowls. He was very good at it. Won many championships and things like that. He liked his gardening and things like that. He liked pottering about, tinkering. He was always tinkering. He was always fixing things, even if he didn't need fixed. His garage and his hut was just full of tools and little jars of different kind of screws and nails and all sorts of weird wooden tools in it that I don't even know how he'd use. He's always fixing his roof in his garage, even if it didn't need fixed. Or in his greenhouse, he had a massive garden with rows and rows and rows of blackcurrant bushes, like a vineyard when you were a wee kid, a vineyard. You're walking around all these massive blackcurrant things, you know. And so he was always he liked to kind of tinker about alone, and he liked mucking about with cars as well. With his brother-in-law, Uncle Bob Armstrong, used to like mucking about with cars and things. And he was a lorry driver. He was the perfect job for a quiet, kind of introverted guy. He was a lorry driver for the National Coal Board. He would take coal from the distribution depot up at the NCB headquarters up at Lugar, and take them from there to various power stations and steel plants and things across the country. When we were wee, we could actually, you were allowed to back then sort of go away in the lorry with your granddad. Of course, it's not allowed now for good reason. I don't want to sound like one of those what's political correctness gone mad, health and safety and all that. But it was fun when the times that we did get to do that. I think it was probably just because my mum was working, there was nowhere else to put us. I mean, one of my great memories for that is his piece, his lunch, his sandwiches. Excuse me. My papa and a lot of men I knew, a lot of miners as well, like sweet sugary things. You might just get the sugar to give you energy at your work. Excuse me. And he would have a roll with butter, with a thick layer of butter, and a mashed up Fry's chocolate cream was his favourite kind of sandwich or roll. And I loved them as well. I might go and make one actually now. I've no had one of them for years. But he drove for the National Coal Board before that, for Houston Brothers of Cumnock, and before that he was in the army, and he drove lorries in Calcutta and in Burma during the war. He didn't really talk much about that kind of stuff, but oh, excuse me, I'm sorry about this, the coughing. Bear with me, I'm not going to go back and record it all again, just for a few coughs, so just bear with me. I need to give up smoking, to be honest. I could blame, smokers usually blame all the other things, but it's fags that makes you do this. So anyway, to get back to my point, I've been writing a lot recently of little silly kind of nonsense poems. It might be because I'm lazy, because they're easy to write, wee 3-line poems. Did one recently, Red Sky at Night, Shepherd's Delight, Fluffy White Clouds on a Brown Sky, Shepherd's Pie, Cheese and Pickle, Ploughman's Lunch. And I like doing these kind of things, you know, they're good fun for me. I don't know if they're very good for anybody else, but I like doing them. And I was thinking about my papa and how he had all these great rhymes and things. Now, I know that the month of Liverpool one's a traditional one you'll hear elsewhere. As I say, I think I'm assuming it comes from Belfast. I don't know. It'd be great to know. And he had this little, when we were going in his car, he liked to drive about in his car. My gran liked to drive around up the west coast and all that kind of stuff. And when we were kids, and my sister Anne and my brother Kirk and the dog Sheila would all be pulled into the back, and he got us to sing this song which didn't distract him, so we used to sing over and over again. You just sing buttercups and daisies, buttercups and daisies, buttercups and daisies, buttercups and daisies, chorus, daisies and buttercups, and it went on like that over and over and over again, which was great fun for us, and it kept us busy, shut us up probably. Not so good when that was transferred into my dad's car. My dad hated it, it drove him mental, you know, so, but he actually loved it. He got us singing that over and over again. And the point I was going, the reason I'm doing this is that there's this little kind of nonsense poem he used to say, and I've always wondered, because it is very local specific, where it came from. I don't know if he ever wrote anything. I don't know if he wrote it himself or he got it from somebody else, but I'm going to tell you anyway. And if there's anybody out there, I don't know, Billy Kay or any of the experts on these kind of things, maybe they can tell us if they'd heard this before or where it came from. Or it might have been Archie's for all I know, it might have been his, it might have been my papa's, but this is it. I've travelled all over the world, through Galston, New Mills and Darvel. I know the horse that's going to win the Derby. It's a black one. And I loved that when I was young. He had loads of those wee kind of things. I just would giggle and giggle and giggle at that. I think because it didn't rhyme at the end and because it was just so kind of stupid and silly. And when you're growing up in villages like that, and Galston and Cumnock and places like that, there was a tradition of poetry among men, among working men, working class men writing poetry, big long rhyming stories, like kind of local stories and national stories as well. There was, and they had great names. I remember knowing of guys like Ranter MacDonald and Archie Leach and Skipper Hudson and all these guys. And they would write brilliant big long stories about like mining disasters or football, like Matt Busby and Jock Stein and Bill Shankly and all that kind of stuff. And quite often they were on like the walls of local pubs and things. People knew about them, or people would write out versions of them and give them around. My Uncle James was a friend of Ranter MacDonald's, and my Uncle James was into his calligraphy, and he used to do big fancy versions of Ranter's poems and things like that stuff. And so it was a very much a tradition. It's a tradition, it probably goes all the way back, Burns and before that, you know. And it's a tradition that I loved, and it probably influenced me as much as, of my generation, there was the great poets that turned you on to poetry that made you kind of think, oh, you know, I can do that. You know, they're not that different from me. So you would sort of grow up with like Linton Kwesi Johnson, John Cooper Clarke, and Attila the Stockbroker, and Jules, and people like that. You know, and you could there was a kind of thing in that kind of punk era of poetry, but I had always been kind of fascinated and into it anyway because of those guys. And it's a tradition that's still there. There's still many great like storytelling kind of poems out there and rhymes out there. Rab Wilson's got several absolute classics, the Pied Piper of Auchinleck and things like that. Robin Cairns is another one who keeps that tradition going. Great stories told in rhyming form, like Old Loch Gellies, one of Robin Cairns' ones as well. Always worth checking out. And I like that keeps going, you know. That's a tradition that shouldn't be lost. There's a kind of spoken word, as it's called, or poetry, changes over the years and becomes trends. So it's quite good that when trends emerge, it's good, you know, and good things come out of that. But it's also good that what went before isn't lost. And I'm going to end talking about my papa and nonsense rhymes and all that kind of stuff. And I'll ask again, if anyone's got any great insights into the month of Liverpool, whether it is from Belfast, where it comes from, different versions of it and all that kind of stuff, feel free in the comments to have a go and enlighten me and educate me. If anybody does know of that, the nonsense poem that Arch used to tell me, where it comes from, if I've heard it before, get in touch with me and let me know. I'd be interested to know. Like half of me thinks maybe he made that one up himself, but maybe I'm giving him more credit than due. I'm going to end with it. There's another fantastic poet from around my way, around my generation, who's sadly no longer with us, Johnny Templeton, also known as Jonas. And Jonas used to write fantastic, big, long storytelling poems. I remember one he had called The Gout, because if you ever get a chance to hear him, I think there are recordings out there, then you should do if you can. I'm not sure where you would get it, but I'm going to finish with a wee short poem that Johnny Templeton wrote, and it's about a word that I know is very, 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 a Scots word, very specific to East Ayrshire. It might even just be the sort of Cumnock and Doon Valley area, maybe as far as Kilmarnock. I've asked around for many years and I've never known this word used beyond that very, very small area very much. And it's a word, the word is Pruch. And Pruch, which I'm pretty sure probably comes from procure, means the stuff that you get for your work, the stuff that you, the perks, the stuff that you steal for your workplace and all that stuff. So I'm going to end with a lovely wee poem, which I think was written about probably just about like 15 years ago or something like that, by Johnny Templeton. It's got, which describes Pruch perfectly. When she first came to power in 1979, we had High House, the Barney, the Kirk and Soul Mine. Now it's 20 years later, they've shut all the pits, and there's no place in Ayrshire for free towels or bits. Thank you. That's my wee rant over for a Sunday morning. I hope you all have a lovely day.